There's an interesting thing about this section in Mark at the beginning. The commentators are befuddled. Because when you look at this, when you look at the way that he traveled, it didn't make any sense to them. Kind of like heading from here to Iowa by way of Kansas and Nebraska and Illinois all on the same trip. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. When you go east to go west and north to go south, that's kind of what it looks like what Jesus was doing. He wasn't going in any particularly easy way. Kind of like how the people of Israel went through the desert for 40 years. But I would kind of like to say that it's something like being a tourist or taking a vacation. Because when you don't have to be somewhere at any particular time, it's a good time to take the time and see things. Say, hey, let's just ride. Let's just drive. Let's just walk. I've done it a few times. Just walked. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know exactly when to be back. Australians call that taking a walkabout. Although, according to what I've heard, those can take 3 months at a time. I've never done that. 3 hours, sure. But 3 months? No, I've never done it. But Jesus wandering about the area. See, one thing about Jesus, and we see, is he keeps trying to find rest. He keeps trying to find times when he can take a break, when he can take a Sabbath, when he can stop doing so much. In this passage again, he was traveling not amongst the Jews, but amongst the Gentiles, those who are not Jews. Because they don't have the background necessarily to know what the hope was for. But one thing that they do know from him, they've heard about the miracles he's done. So when he gets to this town, some people brought to him a man who was deaf and could barely talk, and they begged him to place his hands on the man. Oftentimes, there are times when we feel like there's nothing we can do, where there's no hope, where we don't have the answers. And that's where the people were with this man. The way that the Greek says this was that he was deaf and he could hardly speak, meaning that he could say words, it's just nobody could understand him. Nobody could understand what he had to say. And so it was very frustrating for the man, and it was very frustrating for his friends, that neither one of them knew how to communicate one with the other. He couldn't talk, and he couldn't hear. So they couldn't communicate with him. So they were without an answer. They wanted to know. They wanted to have the possibility of communicating with this man. They said, we've heard about what you've done. Please lay your hands on the man. Please lay your hands on the man. Now, Jesus is healed in different ways. And in this case, the thing that's happening with them is that's the way that they've experienced healing, that they understand it, that hands have to be laid on them. And Jesus went a step further than just laying a hand on the man. You know, when we generally think that laying hands on somebody is set your hand on the shoulder, you set hands on the head. He puts his hands on his ears. He put his hand on his tongue. And he spits. Once again, following some of what they would understand. See, that's something that God does. That's something that Jesus did. Jesus here took something that they knew in order to minister to them. He was able to speak to them in a way that they could hear. See, God speaks to us in so many different ways. God speaks to different people in different ways because different people hear differently. This isn't just language. It's actions. Anybody watching may not have known his word, Ephatha, what it meant, what it was about. To some people, it may have just been a magic word. But it was a word that means be opened. Open your mouth. Start speaking. Jesus works on him the way that he would understand. And so God will work in us in ways that we understand. Now sometimes we're very dense people and it takes a long time for us to listen. It takes a long time for us to understand when God is speaking to us. Sometimes that's because we're talking too much. Sometimes it's because we're thinking too much. Sometimes it's because we're doing too much. There have been cases of people who would try to get healed. And so they would follow around a teacher from state to state to state. They'll still not be healed. They keep following because they thought this was the way that they would need to be healed. And yet God had something else for them. God would reach them in a different way. Only upon staying at home were some of those people able to be healed. And they stopped doing what they thought and started doing what God told them to do.